Hey guys, what's going on? Ron Sneller here. Today we're going to be talking about the tax advantages of the IUL and why some people refer to the IUL. I've heard it called all sorts of different things. I've heard it called the retirement miracle. I've heard it called like financial pocket knife, sorts of things, right? There's some good reasons for that. IUL can be a really good tool. Now, the problem is it's one of those things that's debated so widely. It seems to be like a really controversial, hot topic, depending on who you are in the industry. There's some life insurance license only agents out there where that's the only thing that they sell, and perhaps they oversell it and overpitch it as far as the benefits. And then there are some traditional financial advisors who are just stuck in the old ways where all they do is traditional asset management or stocks and bonds or financial planning or whatever you want to call it. And so those people a lot of times look at IUL as competition for what they do, or they look at insurance license only agents as somebody that you shouldn't be taking advice from. But really, depending on the situation, I've seen people who only have their insurance licenses who have a lot more experience and a lot more intelligence and wealth building acumen than traditional financial advisors. Now, me here, Ron Sneller at Sneller Financial, I'm licensed to do both. Manage about $45 million of client assets. We do about 20 million of annuities is what we've done with annuities. We also do cash value insurance. So over the last 4 or 5 years, since being an independent advisor, I've done over $1 million of target life insurance premium as well, between indexed universal life and whole life policies. So I do all of those things. So I'm able to talk about this openly and middle and taking an objective look at it. Although I will say that I consider myself to be a safety first retirement planner. And so I like using cash value life insurance as a foundation of a financial plan or a foundation of a portfolio. And I use cash value life insurance for myself and for my family as well. So let's get into some talking points here. So number one, you probably have heard that many banks and many wealthy families own billions and billions of dollars of cash value inside these life insurance contracts. And that's the truth. Like, for example, Bank of America owns about 25 billion cash value in these insurance policies. The value that they have in insurance policies, not the death benefit, the actual cash value is more than all of their real estate holdings combined. So why do wealthy people and corporations and banks love cash value life insurance so much? Or why do they utilize it as part of their financial plan? A couple of things here, guys. Number one, I would say that it is one of the best kept secrets in personal finance. And some of the people that are out there that try to downplay IULs because it's competition for what they do, one of their talking points is, well, using cash value insurance, that's only for rich people. You don't want to do that. You're poor or you're middle class, so you should just stay doing what the poor to middle class do, I guess. I don't know. It's like the wealthy are doing it. Doesn't it make sense? Isn't that a good thing? Shouldn't we try to emulate what the wealthy are like? That doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be putting 6 figures into cash value life insurance every year, but the same concept of the same benefit is available to middle class families as well. So I think, it could be a very important piece of somebody's financial plan. Why do they, but let's get to the reasons why banks and corporations and wealthy individuals, why do they store so much money in cash value life insurance? A couple things here. Number one, looking at the safety of the asset, right? We all know, if we look back over the last 20 or 25 years, we know that stocks can crash and crypto can crash and real estate can crash. We've been through all that. We've seen all that. Life insurance is one of those things where it's called a tier 1 asset, meaning that banks will hold life insurance in their portfolio or on their balance sheet as a tier 1 asset, which means that it's technically that it's safe and unassailable. And the reason why is that these life insurance companies are the strongest institutions on planet Earth. I would say a lot stronger than the banks. For proof, I would say let's go back to 2008, and during the great financial crisis. During 2008, we saw about 400 banks fail and 0 life insurance companies failed. And part of the reason why is that life insurance companies are risk management. They can't speculate. They can't take a bunch of risk. They do very safe, very foundational type investing with their portfolio, because at the end of the day, it is insurance. They can't be taking risks. They can never say to a widow, oh, sorry that your husband died. However, we don't have the money to pay your claim, but it's not our fault because the market crashed 50%. No, they can't take that speculation. They can't take that risk. It's that foundational element. So that would be benefit number one, why wealthy people and corporations and banks, why they like cash value life insurance, is just for the safety and the stability of that asset. Number two would be the liquidity of it. Unlike traditional retirement plans like 401ks or traditional IRAs, when you put money into those plans, they could be a good thing to prepare for retirement, at least with a portion of your money or a part of your plan. However, if you are like the average American who's saving for retirement, and if you put all of your money in your 401, that money's pretty much locked up until you're 60 years old, right? And if you need to get that money out early, you're paying federal income tax and state income tax and early withdrawal penalties. Some 401ks will even let you borrow from there, but there's a lot of restrictions on that and how that works as well. 401 max loan is either 50% of your balance or up to $50,000. And if you need more than that, then you're going to have to start withdrawing that money, again, paying the taxes and paying the penalties and the fees and things of that nature. So cash value life insurance, you can build up 6 or 7 figures of cash value inside those policies, and then you can access it by not even withdrawing it, by borrowing against the policy, which allows the policy to continue to grow and compound and calculate that earned interest on the full amount of money, which we'll get into a little bit later. But wealthy people, they know, hey, I can borrow against this. I'm not paying any taxes on it. I won't interrupt the compound potential of the wealth that I'm growing, and then I can pay it back on my own time with my own terms. And it can be a really good thing for people who value liquidity, right? So we talked about the safety, we've talked about the liquidity, but also the growth potential as well. Generally speaking, cash value life insurance is going to function in your portfolio over the long term. It's going to give a bond-like return, but with no risk of bonds, because at the end of the day, as we've all found out recently, bonds are securities and bonds can lose money. Generally, they're less volatile than stocks. They tend usually to not move in the same direction as stocks. However, as we've seen recently, bonds are securities and they can lose value. For example, if you invested in long-term bonds, like if you look at ticker symbol TLT, which is an iShares 20-year treasury bond ETF, over the last 5 years, it's down almost 50%. So imagine investing in that in 2021, coming out of COVID and thinking, oh, I'm buying long-term government bonds. This is a safe asset. And then actually having your value cut in half over the last 5 years, you probably wouldn't be too happy about that. So with cash value life insurance, like whole life insurance, index universal life insurance, you cannot lose money due to a market crash. And so having that safety and having the liquidity is something that's really important to a lot of people. But then also the tax advantages is the next thing why people like these policies as well. Again, not for all of your money, but for a portion of it, right? So the tax advantages, because when you have a policy that's properly structured and you access the money properly as well, once the money goes into the policy, you'll never pay income tax on that money ever again. It grows tax-free. You can access the money tax-free. You can take retirement distributions tax-free. And then when you die, the cash value blossoms into a larger death benefit. And then that death benefit pays tax-free as well. So it could be a great tool to utilize all the tax advantages in the tax code as well. Again, growing money tax-free, accessing it tax-free, retirement distributions tax-free, and then a tax-free death benefit to create generational wealth as well. So that's what I guess like all the hype is about, why wealthy people, why corporations and banks, why they like to use cash value life insurance as like a foundational piece, the safety, the guarantees, the liquidity, and the tax advantages. Number 2, we've heard with IUL that you can participate in market gains without taking any market losses. Exactly how does that work? And I would say that's probably one of the most misunderstood features of an IUL policy or an index universal life is how the index crediting works. Let's discuss these policies, because what they're designed to do is to link your money to the performance of a market index and give you some of the upside growth, but at the same time, giving you complete downside protection when the market does have a bad year, when the market goes down. So the way that works is when the money goes into the policy, let's say that you're paying your premium annually. Let's say that you're making your annual premium deposit on August 1st, 2026. So what's going to happen is during the next year, you are not going to watch that money go up and down every day like you would with the stock market. What happens is on August 1st, 2026, the money goes in, it is linked to a stock market index. Let's say the S&P 500, it's linked to the S&P 500 at whatever level the S&P is on August 1st. And then we look at it 1 year later on August 1st, 2027. If the market went down, you don't lose a dime. You're completely protected. In the insurance company, they take the fist to the chin, right? So you're completely protected. Now, if the market goes up, you're going to get some of the upside because the insurance company, what the insurance company is doing, the insurance company is buying options on a market index. So if the market goes down, the insurance company lets the option expire worthless. They eat that cost. They take the brunt of the loss for you. Now, if the index goes up or if the market goes up during that year, they will exercise the option. They take that upside gain, and then they're going to bring you along with them, like as a business partner, and they're going to be crediting you interest based on however you chose to track the index. And there's a variety of ways you can do it. There's uncapped indexes that give you a certain participation rate or a spread, and there's all sorts of different ways. I'll just say, like when markets have been doing well over this last year, I've had clients get interest credits of 9%, 12%, 17%. So when the markets are doing well, IUL allows you to get a nice piece of that upside potential. But if the market turns around and has a bad year where the bottom falls out and we lose 30%, the principal in your IUL is protected, and all of the gains that you earned in the previous years, that's going to be protected as well. So it can be a really nice thing, again, to protect your money, but also to give yourself some good upside potential, where over time, you're likely to average somewhere between 5 to 7% long-term with an IUL, net of the fees of the life insurance policy itself, right? So again, a lot of people are like, hey, if I can average 5 to 7% with no market risk and no income tax due and have life insurance protection, those are all really good things. And I think it can be a really good foundational element to a portfolio, but that's how the index crediting works. And again, people, I think, get mad at IUL because of how it's sold in the industry, where agents say you can get stock market like gains, but with no risk of loss. And that's not necessarily true, right? Because you can never have your cake and eat it too. When the market goes up, look, the insurance companies, they're in the business to make money. When the market goes up, they're not just going to give you all of the gain and then take all of the loss when the market goes down. That's ridiculous, right? And so they're going to be making some money because they credit you some of the gain on the way up, but they're taking some for themselves, right? But again, people will look at that and say, now, Ron, wait a second. So you're telling me if the market goes down, I have complete downside protection. I'll just get 0 for the year. But if the market goes up, when it has good years, I can get 8, 10, 12, 15% without ever risking losing money. And I'm like, that's it. And they're like, I love that, but it sounds too good to be true. So how does the insurance company actually do that? Well, the insurance company does not have a crystal ball. What they're doing with the strategy, this is called index hedging, where they're linking it to the market, again, protecting you on the downside, giving you some of the index credits on the upside, but they need a long-term horizon to make this work, because they know over the long term, or let's say even just a 10-year period, they know that on average, the market's going to go down 2 or 3 years, but it's going to go up the other 7 or 8. They just don't know exactly which years it's going to be up or down, right? So the insurance company needs a long-term commitment in order to make this index crediting work. Because think about it. If you signed up for an IUL and you're putting money in, and let's say the first 2 years are down years, right? And the insurance company's like taking the loss, knowing that they're going to make up for that later on in the policy with the good years. But if you are just able to quit after 2 years, maybe you get impatient. Well, market's going down. I'm not gaining anything. This sucks. I'm just going to quit. Whatever, right? Well, if you were able to do that without any ramification, that means that the insurance company would be left holding the bag, absorbing your losses for those first 2 years. And that means the insurance company would lose money. And let's face it, the insurance companies are not in the business of losing money, right? And so that's the scoop on that. So insurance companies not in the business of losing money. So they need that long-term commitment. So most IULs have a 10-year commitment period or a 10-year surrender charge. And so what that means is that if you cancel your policy early or try to step out of it early, you're going to pay a penalty or a fee. So when we do IULs, we have to understand that although you can borrow against them, and although there's some liquidity there, generally speaking, the liquidity is going to be reduced in the earlier years of the IUL when you're in years 1, 2, 3, as you're just getting into that 10-year commitment period. So that's something that's really important to remember as well. Let's see. Let's invite my assistant to the StreamYard here, because I forgot to do that at first. All right, cool. Let's see. Where were we here? Number 3, how can you create tax advantage retirement income? Because that's one of the things that we talk about with IUL are all the tax advantages of it. I mentioned earlier that when the money goes into the policy, as long as the policy is properly structured and you take the distributions properly, you'll never owe income tax on that money ever again. And so that can be really valuable for long-term retirement planning. Most retirees have money that's taxable or tax deferred, right? Like they put money into a 401. For most people, that's where the bulk of their money is. And they took a tax deduction when they put that money in, but that means they never paid the tax. So now if they're fortunate enough, they've grown a large nest egg, whether they got $1 million or $2 million or whatever, when they start taking the retirement distributions, that means that money's going to be fully taxable. And it means it's going to be fully taxable at whatever the tax rates are at that time. Like right now, taxes are historically low. And look, I hate paying taxes as much as the next guy, probably more than the next guy on average. So right now, we're in a historically low tax environment. And I hate paying taxes probably more than the average guy. However, I do understand that they are historically low when you look in the context of where they've been at in the past. And people tend to think in terms of static situations. Well, things are the way they are today. So tomorrow they'll be the same way that they are today. People think of that, including their tax rates. But the problem is the country is $40 trillion in debt. and Social Security is on the verge of bankruptcy, and Medicare is broke. And we have a public pension crisis in this country where the pension systems are underfunded to the tune of trillions of dollars. Hell, we've even got cities and states on the verge of bankruptcy. Where are they going to get the money? They're going to have to get it through tax revenue by increasing tax rates. Now, the problem is if you're young, if you're in your 30s or 40s and retirement's not until 20 or 30 years off, guess what that means? That means that over time, it's likely that the government will end up raising the tax rates. So if you take a tax deduction with your 401 now in a low tax environment, but when you retire 30 years from now, if in between the government has raised taxes, when you go to take that money out, that tax deferred money, you'll owe taxes on it at that time, but also you'll owe taxes at the rate that is in force at that time, right? So you could be taking a tax deduction in a historically low tax environment and then actually be paying higher tax rates later, right? So I think the fact that if they do raise taxes over time to try to balance a budget and reduce our deficits and bring down the debt, things of that nature, if you have money in an IUL's tax-free, right? So what that means is later on, when you take the money out, even if they've doubled tax rates over time, it's like my IUL money, I can still take it out tax-free and avoid that tax hit in the future. And so that could be really valuable, but also just for tax diversification as well, right? Number 4, we talk about using IUL as a volatility buffer and why it could be such a huge difference during retirement. Because a lot of people retire with stocks and bonds. And as we've talked about, those things are variable. They have risk to them. They can go down, right? And while you're young and while you're in the accumulation stage of your life, that's okay. That's how you're able to make some good money, is to take some risk and accumulate shares. And when the market goes down, if you're dollar cost averaging and you're still purchasing shares while they're down long term, hopefully that should work out for you. It should help grow your net worth, right? But when you retire and you start taking distributions out of your retirement portfolio, the rules of the game change completely, because during those times where the market goes down and you're taking money out of your portfolio to live on because you're retired and you need the income, as you're making withdrawals into a declining market, you're just accelerating that downward spiral and sending your portfolio potentially into a death spiral that you never be able to recover from. So another reason why IUL can be so valuable is a volatility buffer. And what that means in retirement, as you're taking income following a down year in the market, instead of selling those stock shares at a loss and using that to raise your income, you don't sell stock that year, or you don't withdraw from your 401k or your Roth IRA. What you do is you take your income from the IUL, because the IUL can't lose value due to a market downturn, right? So it can't go down. So if we go through a bear market where the market's down for a year or two, you take your retirement income from your IUL for a couple of years. And what that allows you to do is not sell shares of stock while it's low, allow it to recover, allow it to come back. And then when it does, then we can pivot from the IUL back to our stock market investments and continue to take our income from our stock market investments, right? And so that could be a very powerful volatility buffer. And David McKnight has done some research. David McKnight is a financial advisor and an author and a coach. And he's done some research showing that if you go into retirement and if you have 5 years of income built up in an IUL to weather those financial storms that could potentially happen in the early years of your retirement, he has shown that through his research that the safe withdrawal rate from your stock market portfolio goes from 4%, because maybe you've heard of the 4% safe withdrawal rate. It goes from 4% withdrawal rate to 8% withdrawal rate. And so that's absolutely incredible. That means a lot more income. But the caveat to that is that only works is if after a down year, instead of drawing from the market-based assets while the market's down, you have enough money built up in your IUL that you can withdraw from your IUL instead. Meaning that when the market's doing well, or even just status quo, you're able to take 8% out of your portfolio because you have that IUL as a volatility buffer to draw money from the IUL after the years where the market goes down. So it ends up enhancing your retirement income in a huge way. Number 5, and I already hit on this, how can IUL help prepare for potential higher taxes in the future? We have to face the facts that this is a very real possibility, maybe a probability, because the country's nearly 40 trillion in debt, and Social Security is on the brink of insolvency, and Medicare is basically bankrupt. And we have a public pension crisis in this country where the pension systems are underfunded to the tune of billions or probably even trillions of dollars. Oh, there's even cities and states on the verge of bankruptcy. So where are they going to get the money to fix all these problems? And it's likely that they're going to have to raise tax rates in the future and increase that tax revenue in order to do it. So if you're saving all of your money in tax deferred 401ks and tax deferred IRAs, That might feel good now. It might save a little bit of taxes right now, but it could potentially lead to a ticking tax time bomb later, because when you go to withdraw that money, you're going to owe income tax on that money, but you're going to owe income tax on that money based on the tax rates at that time. And if they raise tax rates, your entire retirement income plan is going to be subject to those higher future tax rates. Again, that's why I like using IUL so much as part of a retirement plan, because anything that you put into the IUL is after tax dollars. It grows tax free. You can access it tax free. But then when you get to retirement, you can take retirement distributions tax free as well. So even if they double tax rates between now and 25 years when I retire, money that comes out of my IULs tax at 0% tax bracket. So even if they double tax rates, 2 times 0 is still 0. And I still have a tax-free retirement income stream. Really important, guys. All right, let's see what else. Oh, how can life insurance, these maximum funded IULs, we're talking about using them as an asset to build up equity where you can borrow against it and where you can use it to supplement your retirement income and give you that tax exempt retirement income source. But they also can be really helpful for planning for long-term care. Many IUL policies offer chronic illness or long-term care riders that allow you to spend your death benefit while you're actually still alive if you need long-term care, meaning if you go into a nursing home, if you need home health care. And generally speaking, what that means is your doctor will sign off saying that you're either cognitively impaired, meaning like Alzheimer's or dementia, or physically impaired, meaning that you can't do what's called 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. Those are things, very basic stuff: bathing, feeding yourself, dressing yourself, using the toilet, transferring, which could be something as simple as getting up out of bed and like walking to your living room, and incontinence, which means like not using the bathroom when you're not supposed to be holding it, I guess. The point is, if you qualify for those benefit triggers, what that means is you're actually able to spend not the cash value. The life insurance benefit is always higher than the cash value. You're actually able to spend that higher life insurance benefit while you're still alive and do it tax-free in order to pay for your long-term care. And the reason that's so important to people who have accumulated assets that are wealthy is because we're using the life insurance company's money, or you're using the life insurance policy to pay for your long-term care. And what that does is that protects and preserves the integrity of all of your other assets, your stocks, your bonds, your 401ks, your Roth IRAs, your real estate. So you don't have to sell off assets, things of that nature, right? And generally speaking, if you're funding that life insurance policy over time, you've got this big old death benefit in relation to the relatively small amount of premium that you're paying. And so what that means, you're able to take care of this long-term care risk as well, basically for pennies on the dollar. So when you look at all of these benefits, the safety, the liquidity, the tax advantages, the long-term care protection, you can see why I'm so passionate about why to implement or include IUL as part of your portfolio, because it truly does serve as one of these like financial pocket knives where you're able to address multiple issues. Like it's like any financial curveball that life throws at you, and IUL, it really can truly help you. If tax rates go up, great. IUL is still tax-free. If you need long-term care, great. The life insurance portion of it can pay for it. You can access your death benefit while you're still alive. If you die early, great. The life insurance benefit pays out. I shouldn't say great, but you're covered. The life insurance pays out, right? If you need access to liquidity, whether it's for an emergency or whether it's for like an opportunity to buy or expand a business, you can access your life insurance cash values, and you can do it before retirement without paying exorbitant taxes and penalties on that. So how much to put into an IUL? I just have a very general rule of thumb that I think works for most people, although this is not like personalized or specific financial advice, but I would say that whatever amount you're saving and investing, 1/3 of it should go into cash value life insurance, like a properly funded IUL where it's structured for maximum cash value. So 1/3 should go into an IUL, and 2/3 should go into traditional like stock market based investments, right? So just as a very hypothetical scenario, if somebody was saving $1,500 a month, what I would want to see is $500 go into an IUL, maybe another $500 go into a Roth IRA, and then maybe another $500 go into a pre-tax 401k. And maybe that's $250 of your money and $250 of the company's money being the company match, right? But if you did that, you'd have 2/3 of the money in the market and 1/3 in the safe IU. And then tax-wise, you'd have 2/3 of that money being tax-free between the IUL and the Roth IRA. And then you'd have 1/3 that would be taxable in retirement. So you'd have diversification from a tax standpoint, and you'd have diversification from a risk standpoint as well. And that's actually the model that Ernst & Young, which is like a CPA and consulting firm model, is what they found was the best model for retirement as far as it increased retirement income and it increased the legacy that was left on to families. That was the model they found worked the best. It worked better than investments only. It worked better than buy term and invest the difference. Again, that with the IUL serving as the volatility buffer and also with some tax advantages in retirement, it gives more net or after tax retirement income and leaves more money to the family as well. So if that was like a structure, if somebody was just getting started and you're trying to think about like, how exactly do we fit IUL in? That could be like a really, really good starting place is think of it as like utilizing like 1/3 of it into your retirement portfolio. Again, on social media, it's just like, hey, a general structure, maybe put 1/3 of the money into an IUL and 2/3 of it into stock-based investments. But look, maybe by the time you're seeing this, maybe you're 45 or 50 and maybe all your money's in the stock market and you don't want it to be like that. Maybe you're thinking by the time you retire at 65, you want 1/3 in the IUL and 2/3 in stock market-based investments. You're already 45, right? So that means that maybe right now you need to do more IUL than what you're doing in the stock market, right? It really just depends. Everybody's a little bit different as far as their goals and their risk tolerance and their time horizon and where they're at currently. But that's where we're able to utilize our experience and to help show you like what's going to be the best path for you. All right. Well, another question we get about IUL is how can it help for longevity planning? What if you live until 90? What if you live until 95? Really interesting because people are living longer than ever before. So we want to discuss how IUL can provide flexibility through retirement while still leaving a legacy to loved ones. So generally speaking, what we do is when we're helping people utilize this for like tax-free retirement income planning, I'll set it up and illustrate it to where it's almost functioning like a personal pension in retirement, where I'll show people like, hey, if you're 40, if you contribute $10,000 per year from age 40 to age 65, that's a 25-year contribution period. At age 65, we'll turn off the contribution and we'll start the retirement distribution. And what I do is I'll stress test that by running it out to age 100. If they do live a 35-year retirement, I want to make sure that money's going to last, right? And so we run it out for a 35-year retirement period. And generally speaking, if someone's 40 when they start and they fund it for 25 years, generally the returns that I see with my clients are usually about 4-to-1, meaning if you put in $10,000 into your IUL and do it from age 40 to age 65. Usually I'm not projecting a ridiculous amount of interest. I usually project a 6 to 6.5% average. I'm not projecting 8 or 10 or anything crazy like that. I'm usually projecting 6 to 6.5% average. But if you contribute $10,000 a year from age 40 to 65, usually your retirement income stream or that retirement distribution is going to be between $40,000 to $50,000. And some of that's going to depend on your health too, because if you're extra healthy, that means you're less of a risk of dying. That means the internal insurance costs or the internal insurance component is going to be less, which means your cash value will function a little bit more efficiently. But think about this, guys. If you're able to take, let's say, $40,000 or $45,000 tax-free from an IUL, compare that to what you would need to have in a traditional pre-tax 401 to get the same amount of income, right? Because if you're familiar with the 4% safe withdrawal rule, if you have $1 million in your 401 and you're taking the 4% safe withdrawal rule, $1 million in your 401k is going to give you $40,000 per year. But that $40,000 in your 401k, it's going to be fully taxable because you haven't paid any tax on that money yet. Right. So in order to get $40,000 net, you might actually have to pull $50,000 gross. Right. And so you might actually need like 1.2 million in a 401 to equal the after-tax income or the after-tax cash flow from an IUL. Right. So I think, again, because of the efficiency of the cash flow or the efficiency of the distribution, it could be a really solid retirement distribution tool. And the reason why people will ask me, well, why can an IUL, although you've accumulated a smaller amount of cash in the IUL, why can it kick off so much more cash flow versus stocks and bonds where you have to pace yourself, or it's recommended that you pace yourself with the 4% safe withdrawal rule? And the reason that the 4% safe withdrawal rule exists is because of the market volatility. Right? When stocks and bonds go down, if you're taking out too much money, it's just going to accelerate the downward spiral and send it into a death spiral, maybe that you will never recover from, and maybe cause you to run out of money at some. That's the key with the IUL, is that when the stock market drops, the worst year that an IUL can ever have is zero, right? The IUL can't go down 30% while you're taking distributions from it. So the internal mechanism or the mechanics of how the distribution is kicked off as far as cash flow, it's a lot more efficient for a retirement income vehicle, right? Dollar for dollar, you're not going to accumulate as much money. You're not going to have as high of a net worth. But a lot of times the actual income or after-tax cash flow is actually a lot of times higher in the IUL. Now, that doesn't mean that you should put all of your money into an IUL, because with that after-tax cash flow, that's not adjusted for inflation, right? So even going into retirement, I don't want people to get too safe. I still want them to have some stocks and bonds in the portfolio, because we're going to need some growth potential to continue to grow our wealth and give us inflation adjusted in. So again, the proper balance is really going to depend on the person watching this and what their goals are, and maybe what they already have. But as far as the efficiency efficiency of distribution and the tax advantages, the IUL is really hard to beat. Next question, is IUL better than simply investing in the stock market? And I think that people, they have this thing going on in their brain where it's either like one or the other. And I just think that's such a terrible way to think about things. That why do people do that, right? When I wake up in the morning and I want to have breakfast, it's like, all right, am I going to eat breakfast or am I going to have a drink of water? And it's like, well, I'm going to do both, right? I'm going to have something to eat and I'm going to drink and get my hydration going as well, right? Or if I'm thinking about my daily food intake, am I going to have breakfast or am I going to have dinner? And it's like, no, I'm going to do both, right? I'm actually going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And as my staff knows, a few protein shakes in there too. So it should be like, I'm going to use an IUL and a Roth IRA and a 401k and get my company match, right? So you should be using all of these tools. But here's the thing, it's not a replacement for the stock market. So you're never going to hear me tell people don't invest in the stock market and only do IUL, right? Like the only way that would work for somebody is if they're super duper risk averse, right? And they want absolutely no stock market risk to any of their money, right? Again, it's not better than investing in the market. It's different. You're going to grow more money in the market. You're generally speaking, right? If you don't mistime the market and make a bunch of mistakes, right? Generally speaking, you'll grow more money in the market, grow more wealth in the market, have more potential for inflation adjusted income. But the IUL is going to have more safety, probably better tax advantages, because the tax advantages is going to be tax-free as you take the distributions, higher cash flow because of the efficiency of the distribution, because there's no market risk there. So again, it's not one or the other. Most people should probably do both, right? Number 9, what are the biggest mistakes people make when purchasing these type of policies? One of the most common mistakes is either buying the wrong type of policy or getting a policy that's not properly structured, which would be the agent's fault, or underfunding the policy, which is the client's fault, right? Because in the financial services industry, everybody wants to blame the financial professional. Everybody wants to blame the advisor, but there are cases where it's the client's fault, right? And what by that is this: if somebody sets up an IUL and they're telling me initially that they want to contribute $10,000 per year, I'm going to take that $10,000 per year and I'm going to buy the least amount of death benefit allowable under the tax code. And the reason that we buy the least amount of death benefit allowable under the tax code is because I want the least amount of costs associated with the policy, right? Because when we bring the death benefit down, that means lower cost of insurance, less charges, less fees, less in commissions paid to the agent. And so what all that means is that's less of a drag on the performance of the cash value within the policy, right? But with that said, if I'm purchasing $10,000, I'm putting into the policy and I've got a certain amount of death benefit, and then the client loses discipline over the years, instead of putting in $10,000 a year, they're only putting in $2,000 a year. Well, guess what? We still have enough death benefit there to sustain $10,000 a year, but they're only putting in $2,000 a year, which means there's a whole bunch of extra death benefit, a whole bunch of extra costs that's not necessary. And what's going to happen is that the policy is going to underperform over time. And it's like, it would be like the same thing. Like if you made some stock market projections, thinking, oh, I'm going to max out my 401k for 20 years. And then you actually don't max out the 401k. Instead of putting $24,000 into it, you only put $6,000 into it. And then you wonder why at the end, you don't end up with the amount of money that you originally projected. That is on the individual's fault, or that's on them, right? Now, how can it be the agent's fault working with somebody who either don't know what they're doing when trying to design one of these policies? Because remember, when you're designing an IUL for maximum efficiency or maximum cash value, you're really doing the exact opposite of what normal life insurance purchases are doing, right? Because most people, when they buy life insurance, they think of it as a cost, right? They think of it as just the coverage or just the projection. They're looking for the most amount of coverage for the very least amount of premium, want to put the least amount of money into your policy. Now, if you're shopping for term insurance, which is just coverage, which is just cost, generally speaking, you want to get the most amount of coverage for the least amount of cost. But if you want to use IUL as an asset and have the cash value work efficiently, again, whatever premium you want to put in, whether it's $1,000 a month or $10,000 a year or whatever the case is, you want to purchase the least amount of death benefit allowable under the tax code. Okay. Again, because when you do that, less coverage is going to mean less cost of insurance, less charges, less fees, less commissions paid to the agent. All of those fees are a reduction, or it drags down the performance of your cash value. And there are some agents who do not know how to properly structure a policy like that. Or they will talk about IULs and all of these benefits of the high cash value IULs, but they'll sell you a normal IUL, which means it's going to be very high death benefit and very low cash value. So it's going to perform terribly as an asset simply because it's not structured correctly. And they get paid more commission on. So there is definitely a very strategic way to design cash value life insurance, right? And you can see that if you're looking at an actual illustration or an actual ledger, but it will show, And again, I'm not saying it's wrong to buy a permanent policy. If your goal is death benefit, whether it's permanent death benefit, estate planning, whatever, that's fine. But I'm just talking about in this instance where we're using it as an asset. The first few years of your life insurance policy, if it's a death benefit focus, you're going to have zero cash value for the first 2, 3, maybe even 4 years, right? And some of the cash value haters that are out there, like Dave Ramsey, he says that all cash value policies are going to have zero cash value for the first 2 or 3 years. And that's not true with properly structured IULs. Even in the first year, you're usually going to have around access to around 50% of your money. By year 2, it's usually around 75%. Year 3, it's around 80%, right? So if you put in $30,000 over the course of 3 years into your IUL, usually by year 3, you're going to have access to around 25,000. So it don't have zero, right? Now you're still going to be a little bit behind what you can access versus what you paid in. Why? Because at the end of the day, even though the policy is properly structured, you still are paying for the life insurance benefit. There still is life insurance there. And even though we've reduced that coverage as much as we possibly can, as far as what's allowable under the tax code, there's still going to be some cost to it, right? But the majority of that cost is front loaded in the first 2 or 3 years of the policy. And then when you get to years 4 or 5, that's where things like really start to get efficient. Like where you're putting in $10,000 and you're seeing your policy grow by $12,000, or you're putting in $10,000 and you're seeing your policy grow by $13,000. Imagine how amazing that is. Think about that. That's a 20 to 30% cash on cash return. Imagine if you went down to your local bank and deposited $10,000 and they actually credited your savings account $12,000. Wouldn't that be amazing? But that's just not happening, right? Again, so it takes a little while to earn your way there, meaning you have to pay the cost of the life insurance itself. And again, guys, the reason that we're using life insurance is because we want the tax wrapper, right? We want all of the advantages of life insurance as is written in the tax code. That's why we're using that as an asset. All right, guys, cool. Let's see. Let's throw the last one here. And the last one that I get asked is about my personal ownership of cash value life insurance. And I almost think about this as, do you practice what you preach thing? And the answer is yes. I share my policies. I share my information out there on social media and in client conversations. Like my family, I call it like the family bank, right? We have 9 total policies. And the reason that we have 9 total policies is we've added on over time as our business has grown and as our income has grown. So we've added on over time. So I have 3 policies on myself, 2 on my wife, and 2 on each of my daughters, right? So that's 9 total policies. And some of them are whole life and some of them are IUL. But I just updated my net worth statement here not too long ago, a couple days ago, and we have almost $600,000 of cash value in our insurance policies now. Do I do 401ks? Yes. Roth IRAs? Yes. In fact, most of my stocks are in brokerage accounts. I have 3 rental properties and I'm involved in an apartment complex syndication. So we have multiple things going on out there, but the cash value life insurance is that foundational element, that foundational asset, because even if a 2008 like scenario hits again and the stocks go way down and the real estate market crashes, I know that I still have plenty of cash that's safe and accessible. And even if I don't need it, gives me peace of mind, right? That if I do need it, gives me peace of mind to keep a long-term focus with these other investments that I have, with the stocks, with the real estate, with the crypto, things of that nature. And it allows me just more patience and more peace of mind to have a long-term focus and allow it to come back, because sometimes it takes a while for the more variable or volatile assets to recover, right? So sometimes, including this cash value life insurance, there's a big mental component to it as well. Right. But that's the reason that I include cash value life insurance in my program and why we've put so much money there. We've built up over time. The last couple of years, I've put 6 figures into our insurance program. And that's the reason why. The safety, the liquidity, the tax advantages, the guarantees, the fact that when I retire, if I ever do decide to retire, that I'll be able to take huge distributions into the 6 figures and not pay a dime of income tax. And then when I die, right, if I die at 65 before taking distributions, the death benefit's going to be really high. As I take distributions for myself, the death benefit's going to come down. But even if I were to die at 80, 85, there's still going to be millions of dollars that are going to pay out to my family, right? And part of that 6 figures that we're putting in, it's policies for my kids too, getting them set up. They're 9 and 7. They're 9 and 7, and they already have cash value policies. I've already borrowed against their policies to pay their private school tuition. I borrow against it, pay the tuition, then make monthly tuition payments back to their policies over time. When they're old enough to drive, how do you think we're going to buy the vehicles, right? We purchased just recently my wife's Navigator through her insurance policies. We borrow against it. The money keeps growing, and we just make car payments back to the policy, which means ultimately we end up recapturing the entire purchase price of the car plus the interest costs that we would have normally paid to a bank. We recapture that, put it back on our balance sheet so we can recycle that money and use it over and over again. So I talk a lot about using these policies for the tax advantages in retirement planning, but if you use it like as private bank, it can provide multiple benefits as well, like leading up to your retirement years. So just really great stuff, guys. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. I know that we covered a lot of information. Anyways, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to send me a direct message. Happy to get back to you. And if you're interested in having a complimentary consultation to learn more about this and how it's going to work for you, simply go to my website, www.snellerfinancial.com. You can book an appointment right there, or you can give me a call as well at our office, 248-499-9676. We do work with clients in more than 40 states. Although if you are local to Metro Detroit, I'd love to see you in office as well. So anyways, guys, once again, thanks for tuning in, and I hope this was helpful. Take care.